Hello and welcome into Sports Talk on a Budget on this beautiful Wednesday afternoon. Actually getting some snow up here in Utah. We've been getting hammered with snow this whole winter. Still in the middle of March, almost towards the end of March, getting a lot of snow. But obviously today is Wednesday, March 22nd. A lot of good sports topic to talk about. Let's go ahead and dive into the show. So first things first, I'm going to go ahead and react to the World Baseball Classic final last night, but not just to the final last night with Japan versus the U.S., but just the whole tournament and kind of give you my overall reaction to the tournament, some positives that came out of it. There is some negatives, but I don't think those negatives nearly come close to the positives there, and just talk about the tournament as a whole and the success that the tournament was this year. Second topic is going to be NFL free agency. Just kind of my reaction, and I'm going to go over some of the top free agent moves and give you my winners and losers of free agency as well. And then to finish off the show, I'm going to give you my Sweet 16 preview and picks. So go ahead and talk about some of what I've seen in the NCAA tournament so far. Then go ahead and preview the Sweet 16, and then make my picks for all 8 games as well. With all that being said, let's go ahead and dive into the show. So as I mentioned, the World Baseball Classic reaction is going to be my first topic of the show. And so last night, the game was Japan and the U.S. Japan beat the U.S. 3-2, and we had the dream scenario last night to end the game. We had Shohei Ohtani on the mound for Japan, closing out the game against Mike Trout up at bat. Obviously, both those players play for the Angels. They're teammates for the Angels. 2 of the best players in baseball, if not the 2 best players in baseball. But guys, that's the scenario we wanted to see all World Baseball Classic. We wanted to see Japan and the U.S. play. We wanted to see Shohei Ohtani versus Mike Trout. Got to a full count, and then Shohei Ohtani got Mike Trout. It looked like a little bit of a breaking ball, or maybe just a four-seam fastball that broke a little bit at the end. But either way, Shohei Ohtani is able to strike out Mike Trout, and that was the last out of the game, which ended up in the result, obviously, of Japan winning the World Baseball Classic. And so big kind of reaction from me from the World Baseball Classic is it's here to stay. The World Baseball Classic is here to stay. I mean, it was unbelievable. Attendance was up to 25K per average on stadium. That was up 24% to the 2017 World Baseball Classic. Japan's win over Korea. This was in pool play. Had 62 million viewers in Japan alone. And the viewership across all markets, foreign and domestic, whether it was in the U.S., Japan, Dominican Republic, Cuba, Venezuela, all over the country, the viewership and just the people that were watching the World Baseball Classic was higher than most MLB playoff games, and was up across the board against World Baseball Classic in the past, 2017, 2009, all the World Baseball Classic in the past. It was up across the board. Now, obviously, it didn't come with any kind of negative or something that that wasn't a good thing that came out of it. Obviously, Edwin Diaz is lost for the season for the New York Mets after injuring himself in the celebration after they eliminated the Dominican Republic in the last game of pool play. And then you had Jose Altuve injuring his thumb, and he's going to be out for about 2 months. So yes, those issues are hard, and it's something that you don't want to see because they're getting paid a lot by the organizations, both the Mets and the Astros respectively. They're getting paid a lot by those organizations, and they don't want to have to lose those guys playing in the World Baseball Classic. But it's not an exhibition, and you know why it's not an exhibition? Just look at the fans. Look at the teams. I mean, first of all, we'll start with the fans. The energy in those stadiums, whether it was played in Miami or it was played in the foreign stadiums that was played all over the world, the energy there was just infectious. It was infectious. These people that were there to watch the game were interested, and they were invested in the game. And not just that, you look at the players on the team and you could tell that kind of national pride they had for their country every single game. I mean, Puerto Rico was celebrating like crazy on the mound after they defeated and eliminated the Dominican Republic. Yes, I know that resulted in Edwin Diaz being out for the season for the Mets, but they were celebrating like they just won the World Series. Japan yesterday was celebrating like they just won the World Series. When Trey Turner hit that grand slam against, I want to say that was Venezuela, they were celebrating like crazy as well. So unbelievable atmospheres, and you could tell from the players that this was an event that they wanted to be a part of. It was something that they wanted to be a part of. This is their World Cup. If you're a baseball player, you're a professional baseball player, this is their World Cup. When it comes to the Olympics, baseball is mostly played by minor league players, college players across the world. It's not as big in the Olympics as obviously the World Series, but the World Baseball Classic has seemed to risen past that and has become pretty much, like I said, the World Cup of baseball. And to me, it was awesome to watch. I got to watch a lot of it. I watched the game last night between Japan and the U.S. I watched the game on Monday night between Cuba and the U.S. I watched some of the Venezuela game. Obviously, that Trey Turner Grand Slam was unbelievable, and Trey Turner had an unbelievable tournament on his own right. But a lot of those games I watched, I watched some of the World Baseball Classic in the past, but not a lot. But a lot of these games I watched, like I said, I could feel the energy in the stadium. And you know what? A lot of these ratings from these baseball games, these World Baseball Classic games, happened over the weekend on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And you know what they were going up against? The NCAA tournament, one of the biggest events in U.S. sports. Basically, outside of the Super Bowl, the NCAA tournament is the next watched sporting event in the U.S., at least a domestic sporting event. Outside of the Super Bowl, the NCAA tournament is the next most watched sporting event domestically in the U.S. And this was the opening weekend, too. Opening weekend is unbelievable. That's when you have, 16 games on Thursday and Friday, 8 games on Saturday and Sunday. So it's a ton of different games to watch and a ton of different networks, whether it's CBS, TBS, True TV, TNT. And still, the World Baseball Classic was able to crush the ratings that they've had in the past and crush a lot of MLB playoff ratings as well. So hats off to the World Baseball Classic. It was an unbelievable showing. Hats off to Japan for winning the World Baseball Classic. Obviously, Shohei Ohtani was the MVP of the World Baseball Classic, but there was other guys that had great tournaments. Obviously, Trey Turner had a great tournament. There was plenty of Puerto Rican players that had great tournaments. Alex Verdugo, guys like that. Randy Arozarena for the Alex Verdugo's from Mexico, but Randy Arozarena for Mexico had a great tournament as well. So great performances, great games, great atmosphere. This is the World Baseball Classic is everything that we are looking for in baseball that we really only get in October. We got that in March. The baseball season, the MLB season hasn't even started, and we just got some of the best, most exciting baseball games that we're probably going to have all year, maybe up until the AL and NLCS and the World Series. So like I said, hats off to the World Baseball Classic. Can't wait till it comes back around in 2026. But they did a great job of just the whole event did a great job. And then obviously the teams and the players showed the emotion that they had for their country and for their team, and they did a great job as well. With all that being said, we'll go ahead and move to my second topic of the day, and that is going to be NFL free agency. And we've had a lot of big name players go to different teams. It's going to take me a minute here, but I'm going to list off some of the most notable movements that we've had so far in free agency. We'll go and start with Jesse Bates going to the Falcons, from the Bengals to the Falcons. Hayden Hurst going from the Bengals to the Panthers. So both those guys go from AFC to NFC, and both to the NFC South too. Miles Sanders goes to the Panthers. From the Eagles to the Panthers. Tremaine Edmonds goes from the Bills to the Bears. Orlando Brown goes from the Kansas City Chiefs to the Cincinnati Bengals. That is a really nice pickup I like for the Bengals. Obviously, their main objective these last 2 years has been protecting Joe Burrow, their franchise. Orlando Brown is one of the best offensive tackles in the league. Not only do you better your offensive line and protect your quarterback, you worsen your biggest competitor in the Kansas City Chiefs offensive line and their protection for their star quarterback as well. C.J. Gardner-Johnson goes to the Lions. Dalton Schultz to the Texans. Jacoby Myers to the Raiders. Let's see here. Juju Smith-Schuster and Mike Gesicki go to the Patriots. Jamal Williams to the Saints. David Montgomery to the Lions. Allen Lazard to the Jets. Javon Hargrave was one of the first moves on last Monday. Goes to the 49ers. And Baker Mayfield goes to the Buccaneers. Most likely, at least from what I can see, is going to be their day one starter. They still may draft a guy, but they are not close enough, obviously, since they made the playoffs, to draft one of the top guys. So it's probably going to be Baker next year, and we'll see how he does. Still a lot of good weapons there for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And so those are kind of the big moves that I saw. Now, there still is some good available free agents on the market, but not that many. So we'll go ahead and go over my top available right now for free agents. Here, let's see here. All right, so best available, you have Ezekiel Elliott. Now, Ezekiel Elliott, he still can be a good third down or goal line running back, but he's obviously not the guy he was in the past. Odell Beckham Jr. Odell Beckham Jr. was very good for the Rams, especially in the playoffs and then that Super Bowl run 2 years ago. but he missed the whole season. He's had injuries off and on all his career, it seems like. So there's a lot of question marks there, but could be a good number 2 or maybe number 3 receiver as well. We'll stay at receivers and we'll go DJ Chark, the wide receiver from the Detroit Lions. Probably a number 3 receiver, but a very solid number 3 receiver. Frank Clark, the defensive end from the Chiefs. He had a very good playoffs, was very disruptive in the AFC Championship game against Joe Burrow and the Bengals, and had a pretty good Super Bowl as well. Bobby Wagner, he's obviously the all-pro linebacker. Played most of his career with the Seattle Seahawks. Last year was with the Los Angeles Rams. Still a very productive linebacker, but not as good and not as quick. And obviously just he's getting older, so not as good as he was. Robbie Gould, the kicker. Robbie Gould is still one of the best kickers in the league. I thought that the 49ers would have re-signed him by now, but don't know what's going on there. But he could be a very solid kicker for a lot of teams within the league. And then last is Leonard Floyd, the linebacker from the Los Angeles Rams. Another guy who's just a very solid player. He's gotten a little bit older, so he's not the guy he used to be, but very solid, consistent player. Can get after the quarterback in the pass game, in the pass rush game, and can also guard and defend maybe some tight ends and things like that. So he can be a versatile linebacker. Like I said, not the player he was a couple years ago, but still a very good, serviceable player. And then right now I'm going to go ahead and name my winners and losers so far of NFL free agency. I'm going to start off with my winners, and I'm going to start off with the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions, they're a team that's right on the cusp. They were right on the cusp, obviously, last year. They missed the playoffs by a game. They eliminated the Packers on that Sunday night game. They were right there. Just if they had a better early start to the season, they probably would be a playoff team. But I like a lot of their pieces. I like Jared Goff. I like Amon-Ra St. Brown. I like DeAndre Swift. They have a very good offensive line, a very underrated good offensive line. But their biggest need was defense, especially in the secondary. And wow, did they go ahead and shore that up. They get Cam Sutton, a very, very good corner. They get C.J. Gardner-Johnson, a very, very, very good defensive back from the Philadelphia Eagles. Had a really good year last year for the Eagles. Obviously, that defense was stout. They get him in the fold. They lose Jamal Williams, but they replace him with David Montgomery. You can argue that David Montgomery is probably a better overall back than Jamal Williams. Now, Jamal Williams was a great locker room guy for the Detroit Lions, but David Montgomery, you pair him with DeAndre Swift, and I think that'll be a really good 1-2 punch in the backfield for them. They re-sign a guy like Alex Anzalone, who's become one of their better defensive players at linebacker. That was big. Linebacker Emmanuel Mosley, that is another big pickup for them as well. I really liked what the Detroit Lions did this offseason. They knew what their weakness was. Their weakness was defense, especially in the secondary. They shored up that secondary. They knew that they potentially were going to lose Jamal Williams, so they went out and got David Montgomery before that was even a question. They probably upgraded at that position. And then you re-sign some of your top talent as well. So very good job from the Detroit Lions. Look for this team, especially if Aaron Rodgers leaves the Green Bay Packers. They could be a potential division-winning team there. I think the Minnesota Vikings take a step back. They could be a potential division-winning team next year in the NFC North. Next, we'll go ahead and stay in the NFC. I'm going to go to the Carolina Panthers. And the Carolina Panthers, obviously, they made that huge trade to get up to the number 1 pick. They lost DJ Moore. I didn't love that move, but they retooled their offense a little bit. You get Miles Sanders, who I think is a very, very serviceable running back. You pair him with Chuba Hubbard. They lost Deontay Foreman, but you have a decent 1-2 punch there. Miles Sanders has played in a lot of big games for the Philadelphia Eagles, obviously played in the Super Bowl this last year. He is a very serviceable running back and can be a number 1 running back in the NFL right now. And then you get Adam Thielen. Adam Thielen is a guy, he's not a number 1 wide receiver, so they're still looking for that for the Panthers now that they've lost DJ Moore. But Adam Thielen is a guy, he's a very, very reliable receiver. He can play in the slot. He can play outside. Very good hands. Obviously not the guy he was 2 or 3 years ago, but is still a very, very good, consistent wide receiver for them. You get Hayden Hurst, the tight end from the Cincinnati Bengals. Hayden Hurst was one of the more underrated players last year in the entire league. He had a really good season and a very good postseason, especially in that divisional game against the Bills for the Cincinnati Bengals. And you get him there now. I really like that pickup for the Carolina Panthers. I think Hayden Hurst could be a really, really good pickup for them. And then a lot of people aren't going to talk about this, but you get Andy Dalton. You know, with that number 1 pick that you just traded for with the Chicago Bears, you're going to be drafting a quarterback. Whether that's Bryce Young, whether that's C.J. Stroud, there's rumors both ways. C.J. Stroud seems to be the lean so far for most people. But whoever you decide to get, It's good to have a veteran quarterback like Andy Dalton, who's an adult, who's mature. He doesn't have any drama. He doesn't have any baggage. Good to have a veteran guy like that who has been there before and done and had some success in this league, especially in Cincinnati, in the locker room with your young quarterback. So I think that's an underrated signing for the Carolina Panthers, is getting Andy Dalton in there so he can help mentor the young quarterback that they draft number 1 overall. And then finally, the safety Von Bell from the Cincinnati Bengals. Von Bell is a very underrated safety. He can cover very well. He tackles well. Just a very good overall player, Von Bell. So I really liked what the Carolina Panthers did. I know that they had to give up a lot to get that number 1 pick. They really feel like Stroud or Young is a generational type quarterback for them. I'm not so sure I agree with that, but either way, they feel that way. New coach Frank Reich has been kind of labeled as a quarterback whisperer. That's kind of been challenged the last couple of years, but is still a very good coach at developing quarterbacks, and he's going to have a young good one in either Stroud or Young. And now they got some weapons for him, and obviously with Sanders, Thielen, and Hayden Hurst as well. And then finally, my last winner is the Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears came into free agency with the most cap space, and they had a lot more than the next team. And it starts off with trading that number 1 pick. You get a bunch of draft capital, but not just that. You go and find your number 1 wide receiver and DJ Moore. So I thought that was huge. DJ Moore, you pair him with Chase Claypool and Darnell Mooney, you're going to have a very good receiver group now to go ahead and give to your young quarterback in Justin Fields. But if you look at their overall signings, you signed Deontay Foreman, the running back from the Carolina Panthers, a very good serviceable running back to go along with Khalil Herbert. So now you have a decent 1-2 punch. Those guys are probably 1A and 1B for their team going forward. Linebacker Tremaine Edmonds from the Buffalo Bills is a very good player. TJ Edwards, another linebacker, a very good player. You get a guard, Nate Davis. You want to obviously protect Justin Fields so he doesn't feel like he has to run around all the time. Tight end Robert Tonyan was the last one that I wanted to highlight here for the Chicago Bears. Now they have Cole Kmet, and that'll be their number 1 tight end. But Robert Tonyan is a very serviceable tight end. And not only by signing him do you get better in the tight end room, but you weaken your division rival in the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers really haven't done anything but talk to the Jets about potentially trading Aaron Rodgers. So they lose one of their better receiving weapons in Robert Tonyan, and you pick him up. That is huge. So Chicago Bears did really well, obviously getting out of that number 1 pick, getting a lot of draft capital and getting DJ Moore. And then they solidified the middle of their defense, which was an issue with Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards. You get better on the offensive line with Nate Davis. And I like the pickup of Robert Tonyan. Not only that, I think he could be a good weapon for Justin Fields, but you steal him from your division rival in Green Bay. And he has been a pretty consistent, serviceable tight end for Green Bay for years now. Now, obviously, when it comes to winners, there's obviously got to be losers in this category. And there's 3 losers to me. You can throw some other teams in there. The first 2, I'm going to start off the Ravens and the Rams. The Ravens and the Rams have done absolutely nothing, no notable signings. We'll start off with the Ravens. Obviously, their offseason has been centered around Lamar Jackson and whether they're going to re-sign him. They signed him to the non-exclusive franchise tag, so people are able to go after him. Talked about that in previous shows. If you want to check that out, you can go ahead to my page and look at my opinion and my reaction to that on some of my other shows. But that's been their whole offseason. They haven't been able to sign a lot of players. This is a team that I feel they're always going to be good because I feel like they're well coached by John Harbaugh and they have a solid defense. But you look at the offensive side, they have some okay running backs, but no one that's going to scare you. And there's no receivers that are going to scare you. Rashad Bateman, Devin Duvernay, they're decent wide receivers, but none of them are number 1. And I'd argue if either of them were a number 2. Then you have Mark Andrews, who's their best receiving threat. He's been injured lately, and his usage rate has been very high with Lamar Jackson over the years. So that doesn't bode well either. So a lot of question marks I have for the Ravens. You have a team like Cincinnati who has taken over that division. You have a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers, who I think are getting better, and Kenny Pickett can ascend maybe this next year. Cleveland has a decent roster as well. So if you're the Baltimore Ravens, especially in the tougher conference in the AFC, I think you should have probably not just focused all your energy on the Lamar Jackson situation, but gone out and made some free agent signings as well. And then you have the Los Angeles Rams. Now, we all knew this was coming for the Los Angeles Rams. They had to dump off players, so they had to dump off Bobby Wagner, Leonard Floyd. You had to trade Jalen Ramsey. They went all out 2 years ago for a Super Bowl, and they got it. So kudos to them. In 2021, they got their Super Bowl. but we all knew that they couldn't afford those players long term and that this was going to happen. So they have very little cap space to no cap space. So they're going to lose a lot of players. They don't have a lot of draft capital. They're going to have to hit on some of their later draft picks. They got some draft capital from the Dolphins in that Jalen Ramsey trade, but either way, they're going to have to hit on their draft picks and hope that some of the young players that they have can get better and can develop, and hope that, Matthew Stafford can be healthy next year, Cooper Kupp can be healthy next year, and see what happens. But either way, the Rams, no notable signing, not a surprise there. They had very little cap space, and they had to dump off veteran players just to create cap space. So, like I said, no surprise there. And then the final one for me is the Minnesota Vikings. I didn't understand the releasing of Adam Thielen. I understand his production has gone down these last couple of years, but he's still been a very consistent wide receiver for you. He was still your clear number 2 wide receiver after Justin Jefferson, so I don't understand why you just decided to kind of dump him off there. But other than that, they don't really have any notable signings. You got Byron Murphy, the cornerback. Marcus Davenport, the defensive end, wasn't bad. That's a decent signing there. They needed help on defense for sure. And then you get a tight end, Josh Lowry. It's not really anybody of note. Minnesota had one of the worst defenses in the league last year. You lose Patrick Peterson, who I think is past his prime, but still a veteran guy in that locker room that has played in some big games. You lose Adam Thielen, another veteran guy in that locker room. I really think that Minnesota is going to be one of those teams next year that you can point to that is going to take a step back. They won a lot of one-possession close games. That can change on a dime in the NFL real quick, and I think it does for the Minnesota Vikings. But with all that being said, that was kind of my free agency recap. As I said before, my winners are the Lions, Panthers, and Bears. There was other teams that made big pickups, but I really liked what those 3 teams did. And obviously the Ravens and Rams had a really rough offseason, and the Vikings don't know what's going on with that direction. They had a really good season, but it was kind of like lightning in a bottle. Can they continue that, especially after all those close games that they won? That can turn, like I said, around quick in the NFL. Finally, we'll go ahead and end the show with my Sweet 16 picks and preview. So just kind of talk about what we've seen so far in March Madness in the NCAA tournament. The 2 best teams to me that I've seen so far in the NCAA tournament are UConn and Alabama. They've absolutely dominated their opponents, dominated their matchups. Bama had a little bit of issues early on with Maryland, was able to put them away no problem in the second half. These 2 teams have been the best 2 teams for me. The fact that Bama almost won by 30 in their opening round game, I know it was a 16 seed, but Brandon Miller didn't score a point, and he is obviously their best player and will be a lottery pick in the NBA draft, obviously barring none of the legal issues come up and make anything worse for him. But that was big for me. And UConn is just a team that is very deep, and they can make shots. They can play good defense. Just a very well-rounded team. They have impressed me so far in the first couple of rounds of the NCAA tournament. Another big storyline is, can Princeton, number 15 seed Princeton and number 9 FAU Florida Atlantic, can they continue these Cinderella runs? Now, obviously, Princeton is more of a Cinderella run at 15. They're going to have a tough matchup. Let's see here on Friday night against Creighton, who's looked really good. And then you have Florida Atlantic. Florida Atlantic is going to be taking on, Tennessee Thursday night. So that's going to be a tough matchup. Tennessee has looked very good. But these 2 teams have played really well. They've made some shots. They've played good defense. They've looked really good so far throughout the tournament. Florida Atlantic got a little lucky, obviously, that Purdue was knocked out by Fairleigh Dickinson. But Fairleigh Dickinson was playing really well at that point, and they were able to still control that game in the second half against them. So I think that's a big storyline. Obviously, can Princeton and Florida Atlantic continue these Cinderella runs against these bigger teams and these better overall teams as well? And then another thing for me is just, we've had a major officiating issue in the NCAA tournament. A lot of close calls. I feel like a lot of whistle-happy refs. I've never seen as much fouls on a 3-point shot in my life than this NCAA tournament. Some of them have been valid, but some of them are not. Some of them they're just barely touching their hand, or they're just barely grasping it as they're coming down. Listen, college basketball doesn't have the NBA rule where you have to let them land and you have to do that. That is an NBA rule. That is not an NCAA college basketball rule. So that is not something that they can lean on there. And I feel like a lot of these have been ticky-tack, and a lot of other fouls have been ticky-tack, where it's like you feel like games are being extended or are taking longer because these refs are calling everything close. There's been so many 50-50 balls being called for fouls. When it's a 50-50 ball, as long as the guy doesn't straight up shove him or elbow or some kind of egregious foul there, you shouldn't be blowing a whistle because both guys have a right to that ball. So the officiating has definitely been an issue for me, and it needs to be cleaned up going forward. It's extending the game, way too many reviews, way too many very ticky-tack calls, and way too many calls on a three-point shot that just didn't need to be called. With all that being said, let's go ahead and get to my picks. We'll start with Thursday night's game. First game Thursday night is going to be 7-seed Michigan State taking on 3-seed Kansas. And Michigan State is actually the favorite in this game. They're favored by 1.5. Michigan State has looked very good. Obviously, they knocked out Marquette on Sunday. They played really good defense down the stretch. They looked really good in their opening game against USC. But Kansas State has also looked very good. They knocked out Kentucky this past weekend. Struggled a little bit in their first game, but were able to pull away late. Kansas State has 2 All-Americans in Keontae Johnson, and I'm just kind of blanking on the other guy there, but they have a really good offensive team. They play solid defense. I like Kansas State in this game to cover, so go ahead and give me Kansas State plus 1.5. Then we go to the next game. That's going to be Arkansas, number 8 Arkansas versus number 4 UConn. And as I mentioned in my opening, I think UConn has looked like the best team in this tournament, but Arkansas does get credit, obviously, for knocking off a number 1 seed in Kansas. They've looked really good down the stretch. They put it to Iowa in their first game as well. So they've played really, really well in their first 2 games, but so has UConn. UConn is currently a 4-point favorite in this game. I like UConn to win and cover, so go ahead and give me UConn -4 in this game. And then we'll go ahead and move on to the third game of the night, and that is going to be Florida, number 9 seed Florida Atlantic versus number 4 seed Tennessee, and Tennessee is currently a 5.5-point favorite. Tennessee looked really good in their game against Duke. They put it to Duke. They were physical with Duke, and they took Duke out of the game basically early in the second half. But this Florida Atlantic team, like I said, they beat Memphis in that opening game, and that was one of the best opening round games of the opening round slate. But they're also a team that has 33 wins. So they're a team that is, battle-tested. They've played well. They have a lot of wins. They're a very good team. I think they cover. I would take Tennessee money line to win the game, but go ahead and give me Florida Atlantic plus 5.5 in this game. And then to round out the 4 Thursday night games, we have a classic matchup. We have 3-seed Gonzaga versus 2-seed UCLA, and UCLA is currently a 1.5-point favorite in this game. Now, a key for UCLA is one of their big guys down low, Bona. Is he 100% healthy? Because he's going to need to be against a guy like Drew Timme, who has had a great tournament and is one of the best big men in the entire NCAA tournament as well. I think he does. He played in the first 2 games. I think he will be healthy. I think he'll be able to slow down Timme. UCLA is one of the top defensive teams in the entire country. I think they'll need that against Drew Timme and the shooters of Gonzaga. I don't see Gonzaga slowing down guys like Tiger Campbell and Jaime Jaquez. So I like UCLA to win this game and cover. So go ahead and give me UCLA -1.5 in this game. And then we'll go ahead and move to the Friday slate here. And we have number 5 San Diego State versus number 1 Alabama. And Alabama is currently a 7-point favorite in this game. Now, as I mentioned in the opening, Alabama is one of my more impressive teams. They're actually the team that I have winning the entire thing. But San Diego State has been a very impressive team as well. They looked really good in their first 2 games. I like the San Diego State team. They play really good defense. They're big. They're physical. They can rebound. Alabama, I think, will win this game, but I think San Diego State keeps it close. So give me San Diego State +7 in this matchup. And then we'll move to the next game, and that is 5-seed Miami versus number 1 Houston. And Houston is a 7-point favorite as well. Now, the big question mark for Houston coming into the tournament was Marcus Sasser, their star player, his kind of injury concerns. First game, he didn't really play much. They were kind of taken to the brink by a 16 seed, but they ended up pulling away and winning the game. Second game, he played a lot more against Auburn, and they put it to him in the second half. He had over 20 points. He looked like the Marcus Sasser that we've been seeing throughout the season, so that really bodes well. But Miami looked really good against Indiana. Miami was really good against Indiana. They looked good in their opening matchup against Drake. So they're a team that is playing well right now at the right time. So I think they keep it close. I like Houston to win, but give me Miami +7 in this matchup. And then we have the 15 seed, the darling of the tournament, Princeton, taking on number 6 Creighton. And Creighton has looked really good in their first 2 matchups. They have looked really good. They look really good against NC State in the opener. They look really good in their next matchup in the round of 32 as well. Creighton has been a really good team. And typically what happens with these 13, 14, and 15 seeds that get to this round, that find their way to the Sweet 16, the magic kind of goes away. The shots aren't dropping as much. Creighton is the much better team. They're a 10-point favorite in this game. I think Creighton rolls in this game, so give me Creighton to win and cover, so Creighton minus 10 in that game. And then we'll go ahead and round out my picks with the last game of Friday night, and we have number 3 Xavier versus number 2 Texas. And Texas is currently a 4.5-point favorite in this game. I love this matchup. Xavier and Texas have been playing really well. Texas got basically all it could handle in the round of 32, but was able to kind of still hold on and win the game against Penn State. Xavier has been playing really well as well. The SEC and the Big East, now I know Texas isn't the SEC yet, but the SEC and the Big East have looked really good so far throughout the tournament. This is going to be, I think, a close game. I think Texas holds on to win this game at the very end, but I think Xavier will cover, so give me Xavier plus 4.5. A lot of these top-seeded teams haven't covered throughout the NCAA tournament, and now they're playing better teams. So I like Texas to win, but Xavier plus 4.5. That has been my show so far today. That was my Sweet 16 picks. Thank you for watching. Obviously, you can watch this show on YouTube under Sports Talk on a Budget. If you prefer the audio version, it's also under Sports Talk on a Budget on places like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Audible, or basically wherever you get your podcasts. And please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, and go ahead and follow me on my social media channels on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Thank you again for listening, and have a great day.